Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down an absolutely fascinating breakthrough out of Johns Hopkins University. They've found a way to use discrete AI tokens to completely solve the severe ambiguity problem we see in highly accelerated MRI scans. Now, if you've ever wondered how we can make medical imaging drastically faster without sacrificing the tiny, life-saving details, well, you are definitely in the right place. This breakthrough is a massive shift. It officially moves us away from traditional continuous pixel estimations to something that resembles a strict medical language. It's really giving us a sneak peek into exactly how the future of diagnostics is going to be built.
Okay, let's jump right into our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the MRI speed problem, a discrete token solution, the AQVAE architecture, teacher-student model distillation, the results, and wrap up with the future of accelerated MRI. Let's get into it. Section 1. The MRI speed problem.
If you've ever had an MRI, you already know they take a notoriously long time. You have to lay perfectly still in this loud, claustrophobic tube, sometimes for up to an hour. And you might think, why not just run the machine faster? Well, speeding up an MRI means the machine is actively collecting fewer physical measurements from the patient. In math terms, this creates what we call a severely ill-posed inverse problem. Basically, there just isn't enough raw data to calculate the correct image. The big issue here is that traditional, continuous AI predictors try to fill in those missing blanks using continuous pixel math. It's kind of like trying to guess what a blurry photo looks like by just smudging all the colors together. Sure, you might end up with a perfectly smooth, pleasant-looking image, but you completely lose the sharp, accurate edges of reality.
You can see exactly what I mean right here. Notice how the extreme 32x accelerated scan on the top left completely loses the sharp, diagnostically important high-frequency anatomy that we clearly see in the fully sampled image on the bottom right. At 32 times acceleration, the machine is capturing so little data that standard continuous reconstruction methods just leave us with this cloudy, unreliable guess of the brain's internal structure. And when we say high-frequency anatomy, we're talking about the tiny, intricate folds of the brain, the delicate margins of tissues, or the exact boundaries of a potential tumor. Losing that detail? That's not just an aesthetic problem. It is a critical loss of the exact medical data a doctor needs to make a life-saving diagnosis.
Moving on to Section 2. A discrete token solution. So to fix this severe blurring problem, the researchers at Johns Hopkins hypothesized a fundamental shift in how the AI actually understands the data. Look at this standard visual modeling on the left. Typically, this builds from low resolution to high resolution, sort of like how you might gradually enhance a low-quality digital photo on your laptop. But the researchers' novel method, which you can see on the right, does something entirely different. Rather than just bumping up the pixel count, their method builds sequentially across native MRI acceleration scales. It starts by interpreting the highly ambiguous 32x undersampled image, then it predicts the 16x scale, then the 8x scale, and so on, until it successfully reconstructs the fully sampled image. It's brilliant because it works natively with how MRI scanners actually capture data in the real world. To really understand how they build these complex medical scales, we've got to wrap our heads around autoregressive modeling. Conceptually, it works exactly like predicting the next word in a sentence when you're typing a text message. Just as your phone's language model knows the word apple naturally follows red, this autoregressive model sequentially predicts the next layer of medical detail. It learns the deep patterns of human biology, understanding exactly what anatomical structures naturally follow one another in a human brain. It's literally building the complete picture step by step based on actual biological rules. Now, instead of just letting the AI guess continuous pixel values to infinity, they actively restrict it using a discrete codebook. I want you to think of this as giving the AI a strict, finite medical dictionary. It restricts the final reconstruction to a compact, highly defined sequence of tokens. This forcefully prevents the model from hallucinating or generating anatomically impossible, overly smoothed shapes. Because every single guess the AI makes has to be a valid, pre-approved word found in that anatomical dictionary, the risk of it just smudging pixels together to hide its uncertainty drops to near zero.
Section 3. The AQVAE architecture.
Okay, so this entire framework relies on three main technical pillars working together in perfect harmony. First, we have a multi-input additive quantized variational autoencoder, or AQVA, which creates that core anatomical vocabulary. Second, there's a cross-attentive autoregressive transformer to actively predict the correct sequence of those medical words. And third, they use a really unique on-policy privileged information distillation process to robustly double-check and refine the system's work after training. Here is the AQVAE in action. It essentially acts as the fundamental translator for this whole process. It takes inputs from various acceleration levels, like those extremely blurry 32x, 16x, and 8x undersampled images we looked at earlier, and it rigorously maps them to discrete tokens using that shared medical dictionary. Then, it cleverly fuses these different tokens together before decoding them. By using what's called additive quantization, it can build incredibly rich representations without needing a massive, impossible-to-train dictionary. The highly accelerated blurry inputs are represented with fewer tokens, while the lower acceleration inputs provide progressively richer detail, and they all merge into a unified, highly accurate latent space.
Now, medical imaging demands extreme spatial fidelity, right? You can't just generate a generic, healthy-looking brain. The output has to match the precise, specific structure of the actual patient currently inside the scanner. To pull this off, the team modified the standard transformer architecture. Through a process called cross-attention, the model essentially cross-references the coarse, zoomed-out global structure of the brain while it simultaneously fills in the microscopic local details. This constant cross-referencing guarantees that the macro structure stays perfectly consistent while the high-frequency micro details get accurately filled in. Basically, it ensures the AI never loses the forest for the trees.
Section 4, Teacher-Student Model Distillation.
When the AI student model practices reconstructing these images, it generates its own rollouts, which are essentially its own rough drafts of the scan. Using a strategy called on-policy privileged information distillation, the student model is actively optimized on its own imperfect rough drafts. It learns exactly how to identify and correct its own mistakes in real time, completely under the strict guidance of a highly advanced master-teacher model. If you follow the exact flow at the bottom here, the student model generates its tokens purely from the blurry, severely undersampled image. It's doing its absolute best with very limited information. But at the exact same time, the frozen, fully trained teacher model evaluates those exact same tokens, but with a massive advantage. The teacher has access to the cheat sheet, the fully sampled perfect ground truth image. Because the teacher has this privileged context, it provides an incredibly robust, accurate corrective signal back to the student, telling it exactly where it went wrong in its prediction. They achieve this through an advanced mathematical technique called reverse KL divergence, where the system actively hunts for overconfidence. Think about it. If the student model acts highly confident about a specific brain fold or tissue boundary, but the teacher's ground truth data proves that fold is physically impossible, the student gets a massive mathematical penalty. It's such a brilliant way to effectively iron out the AI hallucinations that naturally plague striational continuous models. It literally forces the student to only output structures that align perfectly with physical reality.
Section 5. The results. Seeing clearly. Let's look at the actual numbers.
Check out Table 1 for Cartesian X undersampling at that extreme 32 times acceleration. Our proposed method absolutely dominates here. For context, Cartesian X is simply a standard pattern the MRI machine uses to systematically skip collecting certain data to save scan time. Focus your attention on the perceptual L-Pipes score, and remember, a lower number means a better, more accurate result. L-Pipes is a specialized AI-driven metric that judges how humans actually perceive image quality rather than just doing raw pixel math. Against top continuous baselines like the physics-informed Mamba Recon, the proposed discrete method cuts the perceptual error down dramatically, and it does this across all primary brain tissue contrast types. Whether it's T1 to see general anatomy, T2 to see fluids, or FLAIR to spot potential lesions, it wins across the board.
But what happens when we introduce an entirely different kind of scanner artifact? Well, even with radial undersampling, which skips data in a circular pattern and introduces entirely different types of corruption, like harsh streaks instead of soft blurring, Table 2 shows the proposed method remains vastly superior. It consistently preserves deep feature similarity better than models like Diffuse Recon or E/V Varnet. The fact that this discrete token approach works so incredibly well across completely different types of physical undersampling is huge. It proves the model is highly robust, not just overtuned to one specific machine setting. It actually understands the biological anatomy it's trying to rebuild.
Let's look at the visual evidence of that distillation process we mentioned earlier. Look inside that blue square. See those noisy, completely hallucinated artifacts floating in the background of the base model? Now look at the distilled column right next to it. By having the teacher model heavily penalize bad guesses using that privileged ground truth context, those dangerous artifacts are explicitly wiped out. The final distilled model clearly delivers a much cleaner, far more anatomically faithful image that a doctor can actually trust without second-guessing random structural noise.
And when compared directly on the exact same scan, the difference is just striking. Focus again on the blue squares to see the fine detail. Traditional, pure data-driven models like UNet, or even highly advanced ones like Mamba Recon, look artificially blurred or heavily smoothed out. Honestly, it almost looks like someone applied a bad smoothing filter to the scan. They completely lose the sharp edges of the brain matter. The proposed discrete model, however, retains incredibly crisp, accurate structural delineation that sits right next to the perfect ground truth on the far right. The clarity is simply on another level.
Section 6. The future of accelerated MRI.
By abandoning continuous, infinite pixel guessing for a restricted vocabulary of discrete, multi-scale tokens, this Johns Hopkins team has essentially rewritten how we decode sparse medical data. As the paper states, our method restricts the solution to compact sequences of codebook tokens, enabling sharp reconstructions even from extremely sparse measurements. It leaves us with a pretty profound thought to take away. If discrete AI tokens can generate perfect medical clarity from just a fraction of the raw data, how soon will the hour-long, claustrophobic MRI scan become a thing of the past? Just imagine walking into a clinic, spending maybe 2 minutes in a scanner, and getting flawless diagnostic imaging. Thanks to next acceleration scale prediction, that future is closer than ever.